How long can I stay in like this?
How long you got?
I have to meet Becca at 11. Oh, I gotta go.
Well, hello and welcome back to Midweek Mashup. Today I'm sitting down with Pastor Eric, and we had kind of an interesting Sunday this week. We had a missional equipping Sunday,
Right.
which is a little bit different from our usual Sundays. Can you kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, so we, feel like every person who calls our church home should be equipped to be an ordinary missionary, meaning we are not just called to come together and do some religious stuff. We're also sent out to bless the world around us and the people that God has put in our lives. And so, probably once every other month, we do these missional equipping gatherings. Sometimes they're around a table where people participate in DBS instead of a sermon. This week we did more of an interactive sermon, and so it felt a little more like a normal Sunday, but a lot of feedback and, hearing stories from the congregation. And just a reminder of some of the key things that we're committed to in terms of blessing our community, especially a part of this Bless Rhythms series that we're doing. And a little bit of inspiration, just hearing what people are up to in their prayer walking, in their blessed rhythms, and seeing how God is using that to make an impact. And so, it was fun. It was experimental. I wanted to try a different format for it, thinking it wouldn't go as long, and of course it went as long. So, but it was a lot of fun. It was fun to do a sermon where I'm regularly asking for input, and we're passing a mic around for people to give their insights. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, I do want to clarify a key term that you used, right? Ordinary and missionary.
Yeah.
Right? And so, not that we're calling people in our congregation ordinary, right? But just for my edification and for us online, calling someone an ordinary missionary means essentially like, I'm not going to like Kenya. Right, something, right? I'm a missionary to my neighborhood, my workplace, and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. In other forms of church, you see like a very top-down way of thinking about who does ministry. And oftentimes folks in the congregation are given this message, intentionally or unintentionally, that like, we pastors, we missionaries, we evangelists will do the ministry. You guys are kind of just spectators, or you participate a little bit, but we'll do the real serious work of the ministry. But that's not the way the Bible lays things out. In Ephesians, Paul says that he gave the apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So we do ministry alongside each other. We equip our congregation to see themselves as people who are in ministry. That we, in the Old Testament, a nation of priests is what they were called. Like the entire people of Israel were meant to be representing God to the rest of the world. God doesn't call like a group of specialists; He calls a whole people. And then Peter, in the New Testament, he reiterates that language, a royal priesthood. That's what we're called to be. We are under King Jesus, this priesthood that is meant to represent Christ to the world. And all of this we talk about in terms of being a blessing. So
So Sunday we specifically talked about, like, as ordinary missionaries, we should go out and eat with people.
Yes.
And we did two versions of the same missional equipping gathering, right? And so you had one that you led in person, and I led one for our online community. And so we actually don't know, as we're sitting down, how each conversation went. And so would you like to fill in our folks online a little bit how that went?
Yeah. So we used a passage in Luke 10 where Jesus sends out 72 of his followers to go and depend on the hospitality of others, to go and stay, whoever welcomes you. And twice he says this thing of eat whatever they put in front of you, right? And there's this kind of mentality of that's a symbol of receiving hospitality. We are guests. The way Peter puts it in his epistle is we are foreigners in a strange land, right? We make our home here, but we don't belong here. And we need to depend on the hospitality of others because we're sent on mission, right? And this idea that that we share meals with people that lead to spiritual conversations or miraculous things happening or opportunities to talk about the good news about Jesus is at the center of what Jesus is asking them to do, right? And so just talking through that and reframing, there's this idea that scientifically, we eat because we have to survive. We need nutrients, right? And then there's also in Silicon Valley culture, there's almost this annoyance that we have to stop working to eat. And so people drink Soylent shakes or whatever because, mealtime is a nuisance. And it's a breakdown of what we know to be true, that community happens around a table. When we share a meal together. We put ourselves on equal footing together, and we, kind of break through the ice, and we get to know each other, and we will open up. And food is very related to culture and identity. And so, it was cool when I asked the question to the congregation, why is mealtime important? Why does it seem to build community? And I had kind of 4 points that I found from some research that other people did. And the congregation intuitively knew it. Before I even listed my 4 things, they said every one of those things. And I thought that was really cool, that it's just kind of baked into us. This reality that sharing a meal with people opens up relationship. And that for us then, we asked the question in DBS, because the sermon was Discovery Bible Study format. We asked the question, well, what does this mean for us? If this is true, and this is a part of what Jesus is sending us to do, what does this mean for us? And so, I kind of shared this idea that we need to think about who we spend time with around a table. What invitations do we accept? What places do we go and regularly just be present so that we can build relationships? Or who are we inviting to sit around a table with us? And then there's one other key thing that the congregation, somebody in the congregation picked up, which was really important, was Jesus sent them 2 by 2, right? He didn't say, go as individuals in the world and you'll change the world. And, Jesus knows that as we go out as individuals and we don't have a support system, we get swallowed up by the world. It's too much. So he sends them 2 by 2 for support, for accountability, for the ability to pray with one another. And so the other question that I kind of close with is, who are your partners in this, right? If he sends us 2 by 2 and you're trying to do this alone, or you don't even know how to get started, well then let's find somebody to connect with, a partner with. Start a group that just prayer walks just for the sake of prayer walking, or shares meals together just for the sake of sharing meals together, but with an open seat for the people who may be curious and want to know more. Maybe want to talk about the Bible, but not in a very formal setting. And so, but now you've already got a group that's doing that. So really encouraging people to find those partners that they are sent with, right? So it was kind of cool. I didn't have to do a ton of preaching, although me, I of course did some preaching, because what I said was more reinforcing what people were able to gather from the passage, and that's always fun. That's always fun when you don't have to you don't have to wonder, did they get it? They got it before I even said it, and that was cool. How about you? How was the online?
Yeah, pretty much the same exact thing. Yeah. And so we had a different facilitator, different group of people all together, but we reached the exact same things. The thing that we really camped on was especially, specifically in our workplaces. It was really cool to see how meeting with our coworkers and even our superiors broke down a lot of walls by meeting over food.
That's cool.
And so getting away from the workplace and then just having a very real personal conversation, not about work. And so, but everything else remained the same. And we reached those same conclusions, and it was really cool to have that opportunity to interact with our online community. We did have some technical issues, right? This is our second time doing this, and so we're figuring it out. But it was fun. It was great. And so we had some folks hop on our Discord. You can go ahead and click the link below if you want to join our Discord server and interact on a week-to-week basis, and not just on Sundays. But,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really great. I am really excited for this mashup because we had a last-minute switch, right? We had a verse that we were going to talk about, and then all of a sudden we're like, actually, let's talk about this one. And so, can you tell us just briefly, just a little bit about that passage, because we switched because it wasn't going to work in the DBS format.
Exactly.
But I feel like it's important. No, the message is still important to share.
That's good. Let me look up the passage real quick so I get it exactly right. Verse 4 of Jeremiah 29. This is what the Lord God, the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon: build houses, settle down, plant gardens, and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters into marriage so they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, don't decrease. And also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Right? And so related to those other passages, there's this concept of like, you're not at home. But make yourself at home. Meaning, this is you're foreigners in a foreign land. Things maybe don't seem the way that they should be, but your job is the same as it's always been. The people of Israel were called from their father Abraham in Genesis 12 on to be blessed and to share that blessing with the whole world, so that the whole world might know the one true God, right? And we know the fact that they're in exile means they failed pretty miserably at that. And the book of Jonah is a really good version of that story, representing Israel of a really bad job of doing what they were called to do, right? And the church is no different. We are engrafted branches, as Paul writes to the Romans, into the people of Israel, and our success varies dramatically, and we've got not the greatest track record all the time. So all of that to say, like he's reminding them, your job is the same as it's always been. Whether you have a king on the throne in Jerusalem and things are the way that they seem to they're supposed to be, or you're in Babylon under this world power, this oppressive rule, your job is the same. It hasn't changed. Eat what's put in front of you. Make yourself at home there. Bless the people around you. Help it to prosper, because you too will then prosper, right? And essentially that's a lot of what Jesus is saying in Luke 10. Bring the peace of Christ. He talks about finding the person of peace and bring peace to that house. If that peace returns to you, stay there and make yourself at home. Eat what's put in front of you. Bring the blessing and presence of Jesus to that place. And then, again, Peter is the other one I considered talking about. He says the same exact thing, just in different ways, but with the hindsight of knowing this amazing thing that has happened with Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. So all that to say, if I could tie a bow on it, the Bible is one big story with many different voices, multiple languages. It's written over a long period of time, and yet it comes together in these different genres and writings, and it's kind of weird, but it comes together to paint this one big story that's not that hard to figure out. God has chosen to work through humanity to bless all of creation. He has chosen a people, Israel, and now the church, to bless the nations so that they might know the one true God and know the life that comes from knowing him. There's a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of cultural stuff that's in the text because it's written in a time and a place, right? We bring our culture to everything. But it comes together to tell this story. And for the church, we are the people of God. Everyone who is willing to live under the lordship of Jesus, we are not elected to personal salvation. We are elected to participate in this mission that God has given us to bless the whole world, all of creation. So, in a sense, these three passages do a really good job of very specifically reminding us this is what you're here for. This is what you're called to do. So.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. If you want to hear more from our series on blessed rhythms, I'll go ahead and add a banner to those videos. And next week, we're going to hear from Pastor Becca.
Yes.
And then the next week after, from Pastor Ty.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit of a break leading up to Easter, and we'll get to round off our series on blessed rhythms. But until then, thank you so much for joining us for Midweek Mashup, and we will see you in the next one.
Blessings.